We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Industrial, military, and home use technologies are just a few of the many applications that Skynet Research is undertaking in our search for the next big thing. Skynet Research has got its eyes on the future. Here at Skynet Research, we're working non-stop to create the next level of robotics. Skynet Research, a global leader in artificial intelligence technologies.
Say hello to the soldier of tomorrow, the T-1 battlefield robot, a fully autonomous ground defensive system. And in the air, the hunter-killer aerial weapons platform. This isn't science fiction, it's reality, thanks to our top-secret innovation, Skynet, the revolutionary artificially intelligent battlefield management network. Using designs generated by Skynet, we need no longer risk the well-being of our men and women in uniform. Robots will take their place on the front lines.
Hi, I'm Chief Master Sergeant William Candy. I was honored to be selected by CRS in the ongoing effort to save American lives.
Great leaders aren't born, they're made. Right here with the technology developed at CRS.
It is now within our power to make war safe, and that is truly priceless. CRS brings you the face of the future. Ooh, it's me.
And with that, I welcome today. With that, I welcome you to today's show. This is the Monday Mashup, and I am Robert Phoenix, and we are going to plunge into the realm of drones today. This is what we're going to be looking at. And I pulled that clip from the first Terminator movie where CRS is developing their Skynet technologies. And one of the pieces of their technology is a Predator-type drone that they actually showed during the clip, their commercial for Skynet. And we are there now, folks. We are there right now, and everything that was talked about in Terminator, a film from the early 90s, it has arrived. Skynet is here. And we're going to get into that and how that is starting to evolve. But what I'm going to do here for the next couple of minutes. I'm only here for 60 minutes today. Sorry, it's Monday. And I'm just now having my coffee. So I'm rounding into form. So what we're going to do here for the next few minutes is we're going to get into 2 articles that I found on drones. So the first article I'm going to read to you has to do with the military statistics. And this is from Wired magazine, and this is from November of this past year. This is called The Danger Room. It was written by Noah Schachtman, and again, it was from 11/9, not 9/11, 11/9 in 2012. The name of the piece is Military Stats Reveal Epicenter of U.S. Drone War. So I'm reading this to you so that you can understand what we're talking about here. This is kind of like the background, the foundation of where things are headed. So here it goes. Forget Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, and all the other secret little war zones. The real center of the U.S. drone campaign is in plain sight on the hot and open battlefield of Afghanistan. The American military has launched 333 drone strikes this year in Afghanistan. And to editorialize a little bit, it's an interesting number, just saying, 333. That's not only the highest total ever, according to U.S. Air Force statistics. It's essentially the same number of robotic attacks in Pakistan since the CIA-led campaign there began nearly 8 years ago. So you have 333, and they say it's essentially the same number. Exactly, essentially. So roughly 333 drone strikes over 8 years in Pakistan, 333 drone strikes in 1 year in Afghanistan. In the last 30 days, there have been 3 reported strikes in Yemen. In Afghanistan, that's just an average day's worth of piloted attacks. So we're looking at really about 1 attack per day in Afghanistan and getting apparently more frequent. And the increased strikes come as the rest of the war in Afghanistan is slowing down. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing a swapping out of ground forces and ground control with air forces and air control. So we're leaving in place the drone technology to surveil and to enforce the rule of law, while the ground forces have been mostly transferred to some other part of the world. The secret drone campaigns have drawn the most scrutiny because of the legal, geopolitical, and ethical questions they raise. But it's worth remembering that the rise of the flying robots is largely occurring in the open on an acknowledged battlefield where the targets are largely unquestioned and the attending issues aren't nearly as fraught. The difference between the Afghan operation and the ones operating in Pakistan and elsewhere come down to the fundamental difference between open military campaigns and covert campaigns run by the intelligence community. It shapes everything from the level of transparency to the command and control, to the rules of engagements, to the process and consequences if an airstrike goes wrong. Emails Peter W. Singer, who runs the Brookings Institution's 21st Century Defense Initiative. Full disclosure, I have a non-resident fellowship there. Okay, so that's interesting because the writer of the piece, Noah Schachtman, is admitting that he is connected to Brookings. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. This is the world we live in. Okay, at least he admitted it. This is why the military side has been far less controversial, and thus why many have pushed it for it to play a greater role as strikes slowly morphed from isolated covert events into a regularized air war. The military has 61 Predator and Reaper combat air patrols, each with 3 or 4 robotic planes. The CIA's inventory is believed to be just a fraction of that, 30 to 35 drones total, although there is thought to be some overlap between the military and intelligence agency fleets. The Washington Post reported last month that the CIA is looking for another 10 drones as the unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, become more and more central to the agency's worldwide counterterror campaign. Right. In Pakistan, those drones are flown with a wink and a nod to avoid the perception of violating national sovereignty. In Yemen, the robots go after men just because they fit a profile of what a U.S. believes to be a terrorist. In both countries, people are considered legitimate targets if they happen to be male and young and in the wrong place at the wrong time. The White House keeps a matrix on who merits robotic death. Man, that is just a creepy statement in and of itself. I'm going to read that again. The White House keeps a matrix on who merits robotic death. Wow, mind-blowing. These are the times we're living in. Congress, outside of the intelligence committees, largely learns about the programs through the papers, blithely unaware, as always, taking their little junkets, flying around the world, getting all the good speaking engagements. None of these statements is true about the drone war in Afghanistan, where strikes are ordered by a local commander overseen by military lawyers, conducted with the sometimes reluctant blessing of the Kabul government, and used almost entirely to help troops under fire. UAVs aren't flown to dodge issues of sovereignty or avoid traditional military assets. They're used because they work better, staying in the sky longer than traditional aircraft and employing more advanced sensors to make sure the targets they hit are legit. And that makes me feel better. The U.S. military is now launching more drone strikes, an average of 33 per month. Well, that's interesting. We had 333 strikes. Now we have 33 per month. The magical algorithms just pop up all over the place, don't they? That at any moment in the 11 years of the Afghan conflict, it's a major escalation from just last year, when the monthly average was 24.5, and it's happening while the rest of the American war effort is winding down. There are 34,000 fewer American troops than there were in the early 2011 campaign. U.S. casualties are down 40% from 2010's toll. Militant attacks are off by about a quarter. Civilian deaths have declined a bit from their awful peak. Drones making the world a better place. Even the air war is shrinking. Overall surveillance sorties are down from an average of 3,183 per month last year to 2,954 in 2012. Drones flew 860 of those sorties and now fly 761 per month. Missions in which U.S. aircraft fire their weapons have declined too. That used to happen 450 times per month on average in 2011. This year, the monthly total dropped to 360. In other words, drone strikes in Afghanistan now make up about 9% of the overall total of aerial attacks. Last year, it was a little more than 5%. The UAVs are growing in importance while the rest of the military campaign is receding. The numbers are yet another powerful data point illustrating the fact that unmanned systems are here and they are here to stay. They show their growing use even as overall strikes go down. Email Singer, who first noticed the drone strike increase. When Barack Obama began his first term in the White House, many in his administration pushed for keeping the number of troops in Afghanistan relatively small while boosting the number of drone strikes. At the same time, Obama decided to go in a different direction. But now as he gets set for the start of his second term, of course this is from 2011, the president appears ready to embrace his internal critics and leave Afghanistan to the robots. Those poor people. Here's the first comment of 31. Comments now closed for that piece. This is by a Math Demon. A dark and dystopian future awaits us. Imagine being an actual civilian Afghan and have these things fly over you, monitoring every suspicious activity you might be committing, such as running, loitering too long in one spot, wearing some unidentified bundle over your shoulder, walking with too many people as company, you name it. We will know that our war in Afghanistan will end once we stop flying these drones over the country, not by pulling our ground forces out of there. What will happen to all the drone operators once the drone activity is lessened in the theater? They'll come back and be employed by law enforcement agencies. And we'll have these beasts flying over our heads instead. In the end, they'll be all over the place monitoring everything and everybody because we all need to be monitored. Just remember to not run between places in the domestic theater, what we call the ghettos, especially if you live in places like, say, Oakland, California. If by chance a 911 call is made reporting a crime nearby, just as you decided to hurry up and catch that game, the result might be an unfortunate accident. This is not a conspiracy theory, but science fiction about to become science fact. And it will be reported plenty by the Danger Room. The Danger Room, of course, the place where we found this. Thank you to Wired magazine. So this is the world we are about to inhabit, ladies and gentlemen. It's a world that is filled with drones, drone strikes, surveillance, you name it. It's coming, and it's coming at us very quickly, very, very quickly. Now, I found another piece that I wanted to read to you. I just have to find it now. Let me see where it is. I've got way too many windows open as usual. By the way, I get knocked for not being prepared. I had it up here. Hold on, let me just find this really quickly. This is actually from a couple days ago, and you're going to find this to be a fascinating article. I believe it's also in here. Let me just see here. This is right here. I think this is, hold on, where is it? It was just a few days ago. So the editor of Wired, Chris Anderson, the guy who started the whole concept of the long tail, is one of the major players in the drone industry. And so the drone industry here in this country is somewhat regulated up until 2015. In 2015, here, this is it right here. In 2015, what's going to happen is that the FAA is going to change its rules regarding what drones can do and where they can do it. And right now, they're regulated. As of 2015, they won't be. And that means that we are looking at an industry here that is getting ready to explode. Now, let me see if I can find this thing. Well, why don't I do this? This is I think, as close as it gets. Let me just put this in here. Hold on. Let's do one more time here. All right. I'm gonna put this in. Hold on. There's two Chris Andersons, and one used to play basketball. Okay, so this is from Chris Anderson. This is another Wired piece. I'm going to read this to you. Chris Anderson was the editor of Wired, and he came up with this idea called the long tail, which kind of revolutionized digital distribution and moving content on the internet. And this is what he wrote. This is from the Wired article, Here Come the Drones. And this is from December. That's in June of last year. How I accidentally kickstarted the domestic drone boom. So this could be the Miles Dyson of the drone world. This is what he says. At last year's Paris Air Show, some of the hottest aircraft were the autonomous unmanned helicopters, a few of them small enough to carry in one hand, that would allow military buyers to put a camera in the sky anywhere, anytime. Manufactured by major defense contractors, arranged and designed from a single-bladed camcopter to a four-bladed multicopters, these drones are being sold as the future of warfare at prices in the tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars. In May, at a different trade show, similar aircraft were once again the most buzzed-about items on display. But this wasn't another exhibition of military hardware. Instead, it was the Hobby Expo China Hobby Expo China in Beijing, where Chinese manufacturers demo their newest and coolest toys. Companies like Shenzhen-based DJI Innovations are selling drones with the same capability as the military ones, sometimes for less than $1,000. These Chinese firms, in turn, are competing with even cheaper drones created by amateurs around the world who share their designs for free in communities online. It's safe to say that drones are the first technology in history where the toy industry and hobbyists are beating the military-industrial complex at their own game. Now, of course, you know that I dabble in astrology. This is clearly Uranus and Aries. And we're early in Uranus and Aries, and I hope to God that we get something out of this besides drones. But what we're looking at here is the hobbyist and the toy industry. Even though Aries is war and military, it's also the individual. So what we're seeing here very early on is the explosion of individual innovation and genius. But it's being plugged into something that's kind of nefarious. I mean, look, I'm going to continue to read this piece, okay, but I need to stop every now and then. If you had a drone, what would you do with it? I mean, seriously, what would you do with a drone? I mean, I really don't want a drone. Do I want a cooler computer? Absolutely. You know, do I want a car that gets 150 miles per gallon? Damn straight I do. I mean, there are a few other things that I'd really like to have as well. But I'm not sure having a drone is anything on a personal level that I would want to experience. I don't have a farm, and I don't have hundreds of heads of cattle that my drone could scan and keep track of. Maybe, you know, emit a really loud sound if they go too far and chase them back. I don't have that. You know, and what would be the cool thing about spying on other people? The only way I'd want to have a drone is if I had a really hot-looking daughter who was in her teenage years. And that way I could have the drone follow her around and then surveil her on her date. That's the only way I'd want to have a drone, to make sure that whoever she's with or wherever she's at, it's copacetic. The drone would be like her escort, right? Just think of it as an escort, a friendly escort. Even if she wasn't hot, I'd still maybe have the drone out there. But you know, we live in a very site-based culture. Look up into America's skies today, and you might just see one of these drones. Small, fully autonomous, and dirt cheap. On any given weekend, someone's probably flying a real-life drone not far from your own personal airspace. They're the ones looking at their laptops instead of their planes. These personal drones can do everything that military drones can, aside from blow up stuff. Although technically they aren't supposed to be used commercially in the U.S., they also must stay below 400 feet within visual line of sight, away from populated areas and airports. And as a little side note here, the FAA is planning to officially allow commercial use starting in 2015. Okay, so we have 2 years before drones become official. They're here now, they're unofficial now. What are all these amateurs doing with their drones? Like the early personal computers, their main use at this point is experimentation. Simple, geeky, fun. But as personal drones become more sophisticated and reliable, practical applications are emerging. The film industry is already full of remotely piloted copters serving as camera platforms with longer reach than booms, as well as cheaper and safer operations than manned helicopters. Some farmers now use drones for crop management, creating aerial images to optimize water and fertilizer distribution. And there are countless scientific uses for drones, from watching algal blooms in the ocean to low altitude measurement of the solar reactivity of the Amazon rainforest. Others are using the craft for wildlife management, tracking endangered species, and quietly mapping out nesting areas that are in need of protection. How about that? You got a little drone hanging over the nesting area. Yeah, buddy. Go ahead, koala bear. Do your thing. Go ahead, panda bear. Go ahead. We got your back. To give a sense of the scale of the personal drone movement, DIY Drones, an online community that I founded in 2007, more on that later, has 26,000 members who fly drones that they either assemble themselves or buy pre-made from dozens of companies that serve the amateur market. All told, there are probably around 1,000 new personal drones to take to the sky every month. 3D Robotics, a company I co-founded, is shipping more than 100 Ardu Pilot Megas a week. That figure rivals the drone sales of the world's top aerospace companies in units, of course not dollars, and the personal drone industry is growing much faster. Why? The reason is the same as with every other digital technology, a Moore's Law style pace where performance regularly doubles while size and price plummet. In fact, the Moore's Law of drone technology is currently accelerating, thanks to the smartphone industry, which relies on the same components: sensors, optics, batteries, and embedded processors, all of them growing smaller and smaller, faster and faster each year. Just as the 1970s saw the birth and rise of personal computing, this decade will see the ascendance of the personal drone. We are entering the drone age. What exactly do we mean by drone? The definition has changed over the years, but today it refers to aircraft that have the capability of autonomous flight, which means they can follow a mission from point to point, typically guided by GPS, but soon this will also be possible through vision and other sensors, which means they'll be able to watch where they go and pilot themselves. This differentiates them, on the one hand, from radio-controlled aircraft, which need to be manually piloted, and on the other, from uncontrolled vehicles like balloons or ballistic rockets. Usually drones, also known as unmanned aerial vehicles, UAV, or unmanned aerial systems, UAS, to include the ground station components, also carry some sort of payload, which at a bare minimum includes cameras or other sensors, as well as some method to transmit data wirelessly back to a base. The definition that fits a $140 million global hawk drone circling over Afghanistan and transmitting video to Air Force Intelligence analysts in California, but it also describes the $500 phone plane that my children fly on weekends. Both have sophisticated computer autopilots, high-resolution cameras, we're partial to GoPros, wireless data connections for video telemetry, ground stations with heads-up displays, and real-time video. My kids were disappointed at a recent tour of the Oshkosh Air Show to see that today's military drone pilots have worse ground stations than they do. Step-by-step mission scripting and the capability to play back footage of the mission in full. The main difference between the two drones is that the Global Hawk can fly at 60,000 feet for 32 hours, and our craft can fly at 400 feet for 30 minutes. What we lack in high-altitude optics, we make up in proximity. We can easily read license plates from the air. Isn't that just a great thing, being able to read license plates from the air? Man. The key ingredient in a drone is the autopilot, a technology that first came into use as a flying aid in the 1930s. Initially, all that autopilots did was keep the aircraft level. A combination of barometric pressure meter, a compass, and a mechanical gyroscope, motorized flying wheels with analog electrical outputs allowed a pilot to set a heading, an altitude, and take a nap, knowing that the aircraft would continue to fly straight ahead until told otherwise. Starting with commercial jetliners, pilots could set waypoints, and the autopilot would fly the entire route. By the early 1990s, aerospace technology could automate an entire flight, including takeoff and landing, though FAA rules still require that commercial pilots handle takeoffs manually. So I guess they can land manually, but I guess takeoffs are part of their deal. Today, all the sensors required to make a functioning autopilot become radically smaller and radically cheaper. Gyroscopes, which measure rates of rotation, magnetometers, which function as digital compasses, pressure sensors, which measure atmospheric pressure to calculate altitude, accelerometers, to measure the force of gravity. All the capabilities of these technologies are now embedded in tiny chips that you can buy at Radio Shack. Indeed, some of the newest sensors combine 3-axis accelerometers gyros, and magnetometers, 9 sensors in all, plus a temperature gauge and a processor into one little package that costs $17. Meanwhile, the brain of an autopilot, the embedded computer or single-chip microprocessor that steers the plane itself on input from all the sensors, has undergone an even more impressive transformation thanks to the rise of the smartphone. Once Apple's iPhone showed that fluid and fast visual inference interfaces on touchscreens were what people wanted, the same insatiable demand for computational power that kicked in with the graphical use interface of the desktop computers came to phones. But unlike the desktop, these mini supercomputers also needed to use as little power as possible. The result was a shift to the hyper-efficient, reduced instruction set computing architectures led by British chip designer ARM, which now dominates the single-chip industry, driving the performance gains of our smartphones and tablets. As it turns out, these chips are also perfect for drones. Fast and power-efficient processors mean that they can go beyond simply following a pre-programmed mission and start to think for themselves. And the smartphone drone connection goes far beyond the processors. These days, a standard smartphone has a full suite of sophisticated inertial sensors to detect its position, a feature that's integrated into everything from games to maps to augmented reality. The demand for higher quality cameras in phones has launched a similar revolution in image capture chips, which are used in drones. The need for smaller, better GPS in phones has brought the same technology to drones as well. Let's see. In short, this new generation of cheap small drones is essentially a fleet of flying smartphones. Oh, isn't that nice? They're just smartphones. Forget about it. Don't worry about it. Just a smartphone. And those military drones, they're just bigger smartphones. Oh, forget about it. Isn't it neat? More and more autopilot electronics look just like smartphone electronics, simply running different software. The technical and economic advantages of curtailing on the economies of scale of the trillion-dollar mobile phone industry are astounding. If you want to understand why the personal drone revolution is happening now, look no farther than your pocket. Even industry has its garage creation myth. Here's mine on the start of the personal drone movement. One sunny Friday afternoon in March 2007, I started playing what I hoped would be a deliciously geeky weekend with the kids. In the usual stack of products that had come into the Wired offices that day to be reviewed, there were two that seemed especially promising, a robotics kit and a ready-to-fly radio-controlled airplane. I settled on a schedule. We would build robots on Saturday and fly planes on Sunday. Awesomeness would surely ensue. By mid-morning on Saturday, things were already going wrong. The kids were happy enough to open the robotics kit from Lego Mindstorms and assemble the starter bot. But a three-wheel rover. But once we powered it up, they could barely hide their disappointment. Hollywood, it turns out, has ruined robotics for kids who now expect laser-armed humanoid machines that also transform into trucks. Back in the real world, after an hour of assembly and programming, the rover could only roll forward and bounce feebly off a wall. Online, we can see that the hobbyists were doing amazing things with Mindstorm's robotic Rubik's Cube solvers, working photocopiers, and more. We wanted to invent something like that, but it was impossible to see how. The kids lost interest after lunch. Okay, I'm going to stop here because all he does now is he goes into, here's where he gets into drones and pop culture. Let's talk about this. Let's read this. Says, drones and pop culture have gotten a bit of a bad reputation. In novelist Andy Suarez's new techno thriller, Kill Decision, clouds of killer drones are programmed to swarm like weaver ants, and they attack everything from people to entire container ships. The gun-carrying quadcopters arrive by the thousands and throw themselves at windows and walls until they break through, sacrificing themselves in countless numbers so that others of their kind can advance. They are entirely autonomous and make their own decisions about where to go and what to shoot. They are single-use like ammunition and mass-produced like cheap cell phones, a vision of drones as disposable commodity modeled after insects, not planes. There's no reason to believe that cheap drones will usher in a weaponized hellscape more than the invention of the helicopters did. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous statement. That is a ridiculous statement. Even on privacy issues, there are existing laws that cover most of the concerns people have about personal drones. What is this guy? I'm sorry. There's no reason to believe that cheap drones will usher in a weaponized hellscape any more than the invention of helicopters are flown by people. Okay, they're flown by people. Humans that must make decisions. They're big. They're loud. You can see them. They have regulations. You know, we're talking about scale with drones. Okay, scale. Try to get 100 helicopters in the same space as 100 drones. And in the privacy front, even privacy issues. There are existing laws that cover most of these concerns. Really? Existing laws are changing all the time, buddy. All the time. Just ask the executive office. All the time. But in its vision of flying robots that are mass-produced like cheap toys and smart enough to think for themselves, Suarez's fiction is closer to reality than most people think. Indeed, he was inspired not by military drones, but by the Parrot AR drone, a quadcopter toy you can buy on Amazon and control your smartphone, complete with dual cameras, transmitting real-time video stream to your screen. Although it's not autonomous, you still have to fly it yourself. It's simply a matter of design choice. For less than $30, you can buy a little circuit board that can connect it to an autopilot. People are dreaming of what companies could do with drones over America, from playful speculations like the Taco Copter, a meal delivery service, to real game changers such as FedEx fleets that use hyper-efficient aircraft designed from the start as drones. A switch to unmanned operation would transform the entire concept of air cargo. Aircraft would be free of design constraints, pressurized cabins, tube-shaped bodies necessary to accommodate humans, and flocks of such drones could fly in V formation like birds to employ efficient aerodynamic drafting. What will we do with our personal drones? That question is just as unanswerable, but just as tantalizing as the same question about personal computers back in 1977 when the Apple II came out. The answer was not much more than program it. But over time, as regular people found uses for PCs in their own lives, they came up with better answers: word processors, spreadsheets, video games, email, and eventually the web. Today, we know what personal computers are for, but it took the liberation of the technology to show us. So too for personal drones. Remember, the military created the internet, but the people colonized it and created the web for their own purposes. The amateur UAV community is hoping to do the same with drones, demilitarize and democratize them so they can find their full potential. There will be good uses and bad ones, but the same is true for any tool, from a crowbar to an ultrasound machine. Ultimately, the way society best figures out how to think about a powerful new technology is to set it free and watch where it flies. That's asinine. I'm sorry. Just to set it free. Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Chris Anderson, we've got literally hundreds and thousands of pounds of nanoparticles, maybe even tons of nanoparticles floating around our atmosphere, floating around our lungs, being lodged in our lungs, lodged in our brains, lodged in our internal organs, lodged in our bloodstream, and let's just see where that flies, shall we? You know, look, I'm not a Luddite. I'm into science. Okay, I like science. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a scientist. I think you can do cool things with science. But this idea about setting it free and watching where it flies is fucking ridiculous. Are you kidding me? It's ridiculous. And the thing about amateur, look, I don't care if you want to go out on a weekend and get geeked up or take pictures, of your neighbor's Volvo with your drone and your kids. So, ooh, look at the detail we got from the dashboard. That's fine. I don't give a shit. Okay? Whatever. But to pass this off as being something that just kind of a hobbyist, plunge into a new technology, piggybacking on smartphone technology, is duplicitous. I mean, this is propaganda. This is marketing for the upcoming drone industry, the commercial drone industry. The commercial drone industry is the way that drones will be introduced into our culture and will become commonplace. And it will be very difficult to it'll be very difficult to tell apart one industry or one drone from another. There may be some insignia or some marking for a law enforcement drone or military drone or a DHS drone, DHS drones, and there may be less markings for a commercial drone or whatever, but they're all going to be sharing the same airspace. And it's opening the floodgates for drones to become a part of our culture. Now, one of the things that he talks about, but doesn't really touch on per se, is the autonomous nature of drones. Okay, so what we're looking at here, at a high level from the military theater, drones will be able to do a number of things. Okay, so let's say the drone is runs on some type of fuel. Let's say it's a jet fuel. Okay, there would be the possibility that a drone could be sent up to literally dock with another drone and refuel it, and then it would go back down, or they could swap the drones out. So there's a relationship that drones have. They essentially what they can be is they can be self-sustaining. They can repair themselves. They're working on ways that drones can actually repair themselves in real time, which means that they would have extra circuit boards. They would have like little assemblies. They can move circuit boards out. They'll be able to do all kinds of things. They may even be able to do physical fixes in real time with themselves. So they'll be able to repair themselves. This is what they're being trained to do. Now, at some point in time, those guys that are sitting there, inside of a bunker in, NORAD in Colorado or Houston or wherever they're sitting, those guys, they won't even be there anymore. And the people that will be running those drones won't even be people. They'll be computers. And so you have computers basically talking with one another. And then what they'll do is, see, the whole thing here is they vector in the ability to learn. And this is what we call AI, or self-recognition. The self-recognition and the learning capacities of these things are going to be accelerated at a quantum level. So they'll be able to program themselves, they'll be able to teach themselves, be able to repair themselves. So now what we have is we have a fairly autonomous entity in our midst. Now, if you are esoterically inclined, and you will have probably read at some point Barbara Marciniak in The Bringers of the Dawn. Okay, this is an important note to make, because in Bringers of the Dawn, she talks about, she channels that there is a form of intelligence that starts on Earth, and it spreads through the universe like a virus, and it has to do with artificial intelligence. If you follow Battlestar Galactica, it's the Cylons. We are talking about the rise of an AI life form that ultimately, according to Marciniak and the Pleiadians, threatens the entire fabric of the universe. And this is where it's all happening. It's all happening right here, right now. This is what's taking place. And the drone technology is the first, the personal computer might be considered the first insertion of this into organic third-dimensional civilian culture. But it's the drone that will take this to a completely other level. Completely other level. I don't want a taco copter, by the way. I want to get out of my house. I'm in my house too much as it is anyway. I want to get out of my house. I want to drive down to the damn taco truck. Okay? I want to go there. I want to see the rickety taco truck. I want to talk to the old Mexican lady who maybe knows about 10 words of English. I want to try to use my stupid pidgin Spanish on her to order a couple of tacos. I want to hear the meat sizzling. I want to hear the chop, 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 chop of the cilantro and the onion. Okay? I want to smell what's coming out of that taco truck. I don't want the taco copter to bring me tacos. Okay? I'm not interested in the taco copter. It does not make my world a better world. I know, I'm a Luddite. What can I say? But this is where we are. We are at the inception. We are at the very, very first moments here of a major shift in not only technology, but also humanity as well. And again, we can look at this through the astrological lens with Uranus and Aries and the birth of home-based technologies. Now, like I said, I hope that this isn't the only thing we get out of this. I mean, I hope that we can reclaim some of this technological power that's floating around in the world. I truly do. You know, I want to see more people get empowered by technology. This does not empower me, okay? I don't feel empowered by having a drone. Do you? Do you feel empowered by having a drone? I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. On a commercial scale, maybe, but that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about personal drone applications. And the type of technology that I'm interested in is much more empowering. It's not some like wonky geek holiday. You know, I mean, Chris Anderson is now turning this hobby into a multi-million-dollar industry for himself. He started a number of companies that are going to be creating these drones, these personal/commercial drones. He's the father of American dronedom. Smart guy. You know, I want powerful tech. You know what I want? I tell you what I want. I want a small clip-on filter that I can just clip on my not a big one, by the way. I just want to stick it right on the nozzle of my faucet, and I want it to remove every shred of fluoride from my water. I want it to be about the size of a ratchet, a thick ratchet. I just clip it on her. That's the kind of personally empowering technology that I'm talking about. Things like that. That's what interests me. That's what interests me. To me, this is a game changer, the drone technology, but it's not a game changer in a good way or a positive way. It's just not. And I know there's a bunch of nerds out there who get their jollies off, but good luck. Luck of that. But you take your kid out and play baseball with Chris Anderson. That might be an interesting thing to do. All right, it is 10 minutes before I have the end of the show here and wrap things up. There was somebody on the line. They're on the line no longer. I'm going to give you the number, 308-8995. Put a 347 in front of it, 347-308-8995. If you want to chime in on this, if you are for drones, call in. Let me know why you like drones. Why do you think drones are a good idea? Am I just living in the dark ages? Am I the equivalent of somebody that says that the sun revolves around the earth? Is that who I am? I could be. Maybe I'm missing something here. But I don't think I am. I think I know exactly what's going on here. And I got to tell you, and it's not a hopeful or positive scenario that I'm envisioning. Well, and this is challenging because I have a kid that's really into robots. He's really into this stuff. So I'm probably going to wind up at some point in time building things with him that are probably going to lead to this kind of proliferation of artificial intelligence. But you see, we're being inundated with artificial intelligence. Now we're being inundated with images of artificial intelligence. There's an interesting McDonald's commercial that's out now where this woman professes her love for a robot over her boyfriend. And there are more and more of these commercials that are being put out there that are making robots look very positive and more human in some ways than humans. This is also what Stanley Kubrick talked about, or at least portrayed in 2001: A Space Odyssey, of when you look at 2001, the characters in 2001 almost robotic. Actually, the Neanderthals are not robotic, or the ape caste are not robotic. But when you go up to the lunar orbiter and then get to the moon, everybody is very stiff. Nobody has any emotion. Everybody's robotic. The first character that has any kind of personality is HAL 2000. And this is exactly what Kubrick was talking about. He was talking about the diminution of the human character and human traits in lieu of cybernetic and computerized virtual traits. And then, of course, what happens to Hal is what happens to every human. Hal becomes a sociopath. That's what happens to Hal. He becomes ambitious, and he becomes a sociopath. And so this is what the guys have to do, or this is what Dave has to do. Dave has to take Hal out. Because at that point, it's either Hal or Dave. So even there, I believe that Kubrick is making a really interesting statement in that even computers, when they become self-aware and to their own degree sentient, succumb to the same kinds of behavioral viruses that infect humans: pride, envy, fear, all elements of sociopathology. Fascinating stuff. And we are just at the dawn of it. We are just now beginning to move into that space. And by 2015, when we're deep into Uranus and Aries, at that point, we will see what will happen as a result of the applications of drones in our environment. I want an air car. That's what I want. Screw the drone. I want an air car. Come on now. Get that air car happening. Who else wants an air car? Raise your hand. That's what I want. I want an air car. Just let me get about 15 feet off the ground. That's what I'm talking about. The air car, the clip-on fluoride filter, and probably about 5 or 6 other things. Cheap energy. Very cheap energy. Energy amplification. That's what I want. Okay, so we are landing the drone craft here. It is almost 1 o'clock in Central Texas. And I am, believe it or not, I am recovering from my ordeal with these nasty viruses that are floating around our atmosphere thanks to these storms of chemtrails that have been bearing down upon us since the holidays and not getting any better. Not getting any better at all. You've got to watch out now for the next wave of this. This is the norovirus, okay? The norovirus. And the norovirus is a stomach virus. I'm going to tell you something. Look, I'm not a doctor, so I'm just giving you my disclosure here. This is the disclosure statement. Anything I'm sharing with you, you must make your own decision. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just sharing with you my experience. Okay? I went out many years ago and I bought a zapper. These are pieces of technology which are considered to be illegal, developed by Hilda Clark. And I've had pretty good success with this zapper when I decided to use it on a regular basis. Carol and Don Croft, by the way, sell a fantastic zapper. You can get one of theirs. I recommend theirs. But I had my zapper, and the norovirus, which is not new, it was going around about 3 years ago, and it started with my kid. This is back when we were all living in the same house. My kid started heaving, and then my ex-wife started heaving. And I'm like, ooh, I must be next. My stomach started to feel a little weird. So what did I do? I put those zappers on my stomach, and I literally slept with the damn zapper. Okay. You know what happened? I didn't get sick. Everybody else around me is hurling, and I felt like the Omega Man. I felt like Charles Heston. I felt like I Am Legend. A rare time, by the way, because usually when most people get sick, so do I. So anyway, if you can hunt down Bob and Carol and get yourself a zapper, I highly recommend it. But of course, you can do what you do. You're your own free agent, and whatever happens is your own choice, your own volition. Wednesday, navigating the astrological matrix. I'm going to try to get somebody on to talk about Chinese astrology and the new Chinese year. And then Friday, I'm scheduled to have a guest looking to confirm it. We'll see. And I've got some really good guests coming up in the following weeks as well, one of which I'm very close to closing. Once I nail it down, I'll share with you all. It'll be a pretty cool guest. Okay, that's it. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to discern what's possible. Thank you for listening to me drone on and on for the last 54 minutes. My name is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Monday Mashup. Oh, by the way, I have a new post up on my site, robertphoenix.com. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's part 2 in the shadow of the Aquarian age. Some very interesting connections being made there, and I think some of you might enjoy it. Okay, I'll see you on Wednesday. Use your head and discern what's real, your heart to what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. I'm out of here.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.